Hello, everyone, and welcome to another month, the last month of 2022, December 2022 of Astro-Tarot forecast. I'm here with my co-host, Susheela Kundargi. We were just talking about our Novembers. How are you? How are you coming out of that November?
It went by in a blink of an eye, and thank goodness, because it was intense. And we were just saying, if you were one of those few people who had Scorpio nicely aspected in your natal chart, great. But for the rest of us, it was intense. It was emotional, but just like I said, it went up to 11. The intensity went up to 11.
Yeah, I felt like November went by slowly. I didn't feel it go. I didn't feel it move quickly. It was just a lot. It was, and yeah, nothing bad necessarily happened. It was just we really met those shadows, those dark parts, the heavy emotions. We met all of that within us, within others. And I was telling you, Susheela, before we started recording, that this Scorpio season, this last Scorpio season, which was most of November, is the only Scorpio season that we will experience in about 19 to 20 years, where Scorpio is also the South Node. So that's important because we have to remember that the lunar nodes of the zodiac are points of letting go, purging, in the case of Scorpio, and evolution and growth. And this is the type of growth and evolution that doesn't happen according to what we want or according to our pace. It happens at, source's pace. And that purging, oh man, was it real? I was sick a lot in November.
Okay.
And I was able to, function and work, but I had to rest a lot. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because when you say, yeah, it didn't go by too quickly for you, and I'm thinking, yeah, you know what, the first part didn't go by quickly at all. And then here I'm thinking we were going to record a little early. We're already on the 5th of December, and that last, I was expecting the pace to continue, and it just sort of accelerated, like somebody took the brakes off and we were revving in the 4th gear, like just like lightning. So it was, I mean, we predicted it in the beginning of November, and we said that, as soon as that Sagittarius season hits, it's going to be like just walking through a door. And the energy was so markedly, drastically different that I don't think, I mean, we knew, but we still couldn't quite expect it in the way that it unfolded. Super fast and super, just way lighter and much more pleasant energy.
Yes, it was amazing to watch it happen. Amazing to feel it happen. And I thought, my God, I kept waiting for Sagittarius season more than just the end of the month. Because Sagittarius season came sooner, and I was like, things have to lighten up. They're going to lighten up, right? Like they have to, they just have to. And as you said, we had talked about it, we had predicted it, but it got to the point for me where it felt so heavy that I was just like, this has to lighten up.
Well,
so
everything, I think too, like not just the physical manifestations of that, but the things, those deep things in our psyches. And for me, my moon is in Scorpio, so it was just like, can I just go to sleep and not dream for a change? Like,
Yeah.
It was extremely intense, that part. So here we are, we're in December, the 5th of December.
Yeah.
Yes. we're about to hit the last moon of the year. Exciting. So I think it looks like a really, it's, compared to what we've been through, it's pretty happy-go-lucky, I think, this December.
Yeah, I think so. So I want to touch on a little bit as to how we transitioned into January. So I'm sorry, into December. So we ended November with a new moon in Sagittarius on November 23rd. Yeah, November 23rd.
Yeah.
And so with that was just, again, it was lighter energy. I could feel this heaviness lift off. Okay. So this opening of Sagittarius energy, the opening of the new moon in Sagittarius, was met with Mercury, the planet of communication, Venus, the planet of relationship, also moving into Sagittarius. Beautiful, beautiful energy, stellium in Sagittarius. We talked about it in our November forecast. Now, a lot of the heavy, deep, introspective dreams, all that stuff that unfolded during Scorpio season in November, Sagittarius season is bringing up to the surface. Like in terms of this human reality, how does it make sense? Why did I go through that? Why did I have those dreams? Those dreams may start to make sense because all of that Sagittarius energy is now creating opposition, 180-degree angle to Mars retrograde in Gemini. And so Mars retrograde in Gemini is something that you and I have been talking about since, September, October, November. It will continue December, and it will still make a difference into, even the first 3 months of next year.
Right.
So this Mars retrograde in Gemini, Mars, the planet of action, planet of anger, assertion, resentment, all of those things, is retrograde. So in Gemini. So before we can move forward with anger and resentment and our thoughts and our plan, being at retrograde in Gemini is about how can we go inward, the psyche, right? The perspective. Gemini represents our perspective. And before we move forward in the same way, how do we take a step back and really become the observer of all of these things that came up during that heavy Scorpio season in November, and that are now beginning to just dawn on us with the activation of Sagittarius energy. I've called the first week or two of December the weeks of collecting data. What's the data that's coming up? What's the data that we're collecting? We're not meant to move forward just yet, but the data that came from the depths of us is beginning to really make sense. So I don't know, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, without even mentioning what the first card that I have for the date of December 6th, tomorrow, I'll hold off on saying what it was, but it was the card that we had for the card of the week last week. And in that, as with every card that sort of has been coming up over the last year, there's this other level. There's a new depth or just a higher interpretation for our collective experience. And so if anybody's been following us for a long time, or they haven't, you probably would have been going through a very lengthy purging and clearing and surrendering cycle for quite a while now, months and months and months, if not even into the previous year. And that cycle is just like every time we get to this point and go like, are we done? Am I done? Have I surrendered enough? Have I purged enough? And then you think it's going to be smooth sailing. It hasn't been.
Right.
It just gives you this little stretch of time where you get to take a breather and you get to
Mhm.
sort of have a little time out and replenish and, you know, all of that. And then it's like, get ready for the next round of purging and the next round of surrendering. And so we're coming into this like actually lighter for a change.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's, you know, something that we've been looking forward to. And I think we didn't really, we stopped thinking it was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're finally entering a time where we can start making sense out of it.
Hmm.
Like the why has this happened? Why do I feel this? What is happening? When is this ending? I think December and perhaps even into January is going to be that time where it all starts really making sense.
Yeah.
You know, in our human brains. So that takes us into, we're going to start December 6th, and that takes us to Mercury, the planet of communication, the planet that rules Gemini, where Mars is currently retrograde. Mercury enters Capricorn. So Mercury leaves the Sagittarius, the sign of truth, the sign of just speaking that truth, the sign of looking at things from a larger perspective and hopefully with an optimistic point of view, which I think really helped during that second half of November. Now it's leaving that, and this Mercury and Capricorn begins to ground a lot of those lessons.
Mm.
It begins to allow us, if Mars retrograde in Gemini has been about stalling certain plans, Mercury entering Capricorn, we can begin to finally create an action plan that feels a lot clearer, where things don't feel so up in the air. And so this is important because we want to catch Mercury in Capricorn, particularly the first, up until the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, before it enters a shadow period, because Mercury is going to retrograde at the end of the month, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Yeah, and that completely makes sense for why I have the moon card. And so that was the card of this past week, and it is the card that represents this aspect. And it's really about dualities and paradoxes. And, you know, we're sort of in this polarized environment of it's either one thing or the other. Oh, I'm not happy, so I'm sad. I'm not sad, so I must be happy. It's good, it's bad, it's day, it's night. There's all of this nuanced emotions and impact that we're sort of missing, or we have been missing, because we're so deeply entrenched in this duality thing, you know, the light and the shadow. So the
Mhm.
moon is there, and it's kind of neat because, as you just mentioned, at the end of the month, we're going to go into that retrograde period, and it sort of gives us that reflection, that reflective aspect to this, or the flip side of this, and or the shadow period as we go. And that's exactly what this is about. It's that there's still an illusory feeling there. It's not everything is illuminated. Some things are becoming illuminated, and that shadow side is not so much the shadow side like some dark horrible internal thing. It's just like, well, why do I do these things? Where are these motivations? Why do I communicate like that? Why do I have this propensity? Why are these people in my life? That's what that's about. So it's a lighter moon kind of vibe, but it's also a little bit more cohesive. It's really being able to float in that emotional place, not be like submerged in like a Scorpio sense. So
Yes, I love that. That's a really great way of putting it. I can feel it. I'm no longer submerged. I feel like I've taken a step back and am able to see what's happened,
yeah.
and how it continues to unfold. That takes us to December 7th, which is the full moon in Gemini, which is the last full moon of the year. This is a pretty important full moon. It's actually a good full moon. So we have the full moon. Whenever we have a full moon, we have the sun on one end opposing the moon on the other. So they're facing one another. The interesting thing about this is that anytime that Mars has a retrograde cycle, it will always have a period in that retrograde cycle, which is the midway period, where it's going to oppose the sun. Okay. This is happening on the same day as the full moon, and it's Mars retrograde in Gemini. Therefore, Mars and the moon are together. This is two different events taking place at the same time in Gemini. This is a big deal because Mars retrogrades happen about every other year. Every single time they have a midway point, Mars opposes the sun, but it doesn't happen with a full moon every time. Mars opposing the sun during the midway retrograde period represents the before and after that Mars retrograde cycle. So October 31st to December 7th is the before of that Mars retrograde, whereas December 8th to January 12th is the after of that Mars retrograde. This is a full moon. A full moon is an emotional culmination of something. It's the clarity of something. To me, this is a significant shift in perspective. This is, I've been calling this the mind finally catching up to what the soul has been doing for a few months now. And Mars activates that. Now, like with any conjunction between the moon and Mars, whether it's a full moon, whatever it is in passing, that is very activating. It can be very triggering. It can lend itself to a lot of projection. So thank goodness that Mercury is in Capricorn by that time, because we can hopefully ground and settle. But I don't think that that's how everyone's going to be able to channel that energy.
So yeah, that's super interesting. And the card that goes with that is really, it kind of made me laugh. It's the Emperor, which is a very masculine Mars-like card. It's aggressive, it's assertive, it's left brain, patriarchal, all that kind of stuff. And we've been leaving this energy for quite some time and transitioning into coming from the Yang energy into the Yin energy, into the Empress energy. But this is like the Emperor with a different, because it's in Gemini, this Emperor has such a different energy. This is like the anti-emperor. It's all of those things that have been the sticklers in that energy have fallen away. And so it's a number 4, it's a balanced energy. It's, I would say, less authoritarian and way more not do this because I said so. It's, we've eliminated all other possibilities. This is actually the path of least resistance. This is the strongest. This is the, it's that kind of a vibe. It's not, it's assertive versus aggressive. It's supportive versus forceful. It's firm versus wishy-washy. Like that's the energy of this guy.
So good. So good. I think that wishy-washy part is the part that we're leaving behind. I think that this full moon in some way represents that final sense of surrendering and acceptance of what is. It's like in terms of the mind no longer getting in the way and understanding the balance and the grounding that it is when we surrender and accept.
Yeah, and it's, the Emperor ideally is the highest level of the masculine energy. It's not the toxic stuff. So in its highest form, that's what we're getting. It's the proper communication. It's the standing your ground, or, sitting firmly, confidently in place. So it's a strange matching of energies, having that, that watery moon with the Gemini, with Mars in retrograde in Gemini. Like it's strange. And so it's, but it's nice because having the Emperor there is very solid. It's very comfortable. It's very confident.
Mhm,
It's, you feel like, okay, yeah, okay, I can do this.
mhm. I like that a lot. Uh, on December 18th, we have the Sun in Sagittarius create an opposition to Mars retrograde in Gemini.
On the
So what did I say?
18th.
Oh, yeah, December 8th. December 8th, Sun in Sagittarius opposite Mars retrograde in Gemini. So this is interesting because I think that this can mean the Sun in Sagittarius, which represents identity, vitality, ego, presence, showing up, showing up in Sagittarius. Okay, I have a greater perspective, a larger perspective, a bird's eye view of what all this has means in the larger spectrum. And I'm showing up optimistically. I don't fully see the picture yet, but I'm showing up optimistically. Sun in Sagittarius opposing Mars retrograde in Gemini, especially after that full moon, is I'm showing up in this way because Mars retrograde in Gemini is activating me to now, take a different avenue, a different course of action, a different plan. And it's just kind of meeting this new vision with the new plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's one thing. If this energy hits someone who hasn't been, intentional and present and mindful and introspective, not fun. This is lashing out. This is just very triggered energy, very reactionary. So it wouldn't be that grounded emperor. So that's interesting too.
Yeah. So the card that I have is really highlighting the most positive aspects of this. And we
Mhm,
always think of oppositions as, something confrontational. It's, things fighting against each other, or there's resistance, or, in the general sense, I oppose you. So there's conflict. But
mhm,
the card that I have is the Nine of Cups, which is abundance, and it's
mhm,
emotional fulfillment and wishes getting granted. And it's when you said, the, how did you phrase it? The one thing catching up with the other. So the new plan matching it up with the, so because now that Emperor energy is there, and so you might
mhm,
have been going, oh my gosh, like when is this thing going to happen? Like, oh, no, 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 it's like such a big thing. Whatever it is that you're planning and hoping for, then you have that support of the Emperor, which is very solid and firm footed. Then all of a sudden you can actually say, okay, this big wild idea of mine, or whatever this next step is, or the next phase, or 2023, or whatever it is you have your sights on, this feeling of abundance is there because you have done the stuff. And so that opposition feels more like a hurdle, and just like climb over it. Somebody's there to help you, or there's helpful energies. And this is such a positive card when it comes to potential. It's not just surviving. It's not just the potential of a little more. It's the potential of, like, really think big, because you can really manifest big stuff, that you're way lighter. You have the support of the universe. There's conducive energies all around you. Like, just go for the big thing.
mhm.
Yeah, there
You
you
know, last month we touched a little bit on, you know, the daring to dream big
go. Mm,
and although I don't think that November was the month to manifest that,
right.
I think it was the time for us to get in touch with that. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because to me, this feels very much like the recognition of the powerful creators that we are. So
Hmm.
when that card comes up and you say dream big, there is a sense of abundance. This is the recognition of we are that abundant energy. We are creators of our reality. It's not just the understanding of things in a superficial way, the way that we've known it all along. I think that this is an understanding just of the power that we carry. That's been my experience. A lot of stuff has shifted for me up here, and I can see it already manifesting very effortlessly and behind the scenes. How does it feel for you?
It reminds me of, and we may have spoken about this in the previous video, I'm not sure. When you see athletes training, like I watch the hockey players training, pulling all this weight behind them, and they're skating on the ice with like, I don't know how much weight behind them, like these straps with like loads of weight, and they're pulling and pulling, pulling. Then they get on the ice without that to play, and they're like shooting forward. We have been used to carrying around all this extra training with extra weights and leg weights and somebody, you know, and whatever, exercise bands, whatever, and uphill in both directions. And then November was that time where we did start planning, but we didn't have, the door wasn't open yet. So we're like, okay, we'll be able to put that into action over there. So we're really close, but for now we're still like, oh, trudging. Now it's like, oh, you can drop the weights. Oh, I can drop the weights. Oh, well, what does that feel like? Okay, well, go ahead, go through the door and see how fast you run. And that's where we're at. Like, and if I get through there, I get the $200, I pass go and I get my $200. Okay, that's really all it is. It's like we have been training for this. So once you take that resistance off, we're flying through.
Yeah, that's a great visual, because it has felt like that. Yeah. And I think we're entering a time where we get to understand how easeful it gets to be to align with the life that we want. And by easeful, I mean energetically. I think there is a calling to a refocus, and not necessarily just in the Capricorn way where it's like, you know, you have to be disciplined and you do, but it's almost this refocus of, why are you paying attention to anything other than what you genuinely desire?
I think it's kind of, you know, the difference between knowing something and thinking. So
Yes.
when you know how to do something, it becomes automatic.
Hmm.
When you're learning how to drive a car, you have to think, oh, I have, and I, you know,
Hmm.
everybody probably remembers turning the steering wheel and not having it like automatically slide back in your hands.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
all of this, and you're doing this thing. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden you get to that point of driving where it's like you turn the corner and the wheel just kind of goes, ooh, right up. I'm like, oh, and we do it now without thinking. We're
Hmm.
not doing it any differently.
Hmm.
Nothing's changed with the mechanism. It hasn't actually become easier. The thing is
Hmm.
exactly the same. It's just we are now doing it automatically.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so that takes us to December 9th. Venus in Sagittarius creating a square to Jupiter and Pisces, and on the same day, right after, Venus enters Capricorn. So anytime that there is a connection between Venus and Jupiter, there is always, you know, that energy always lends itself for some overindulgence, to exaggerate, romanticize, rose-colored glasses. Everything is beautiful. Everything is great. I think it's fun energy, especially because it's active really. December 9th is a Friday, and
Mhm.
it's really that aspect is active throughout the weekend. So great energy to very Venus and Sagittarius, have a great time, socialize, party. Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter rules both Pisces and Sagittarius. Let's have a great time. You'll want to be mindful of, again, if you're out and you're partying, of the overindulgence, especially of alcohol and drugs, because that's Pisces energy. Um, Now, especially, and you want to be mindful of the indulgence or the overindulgence, because Venus is going to move into Capricorn, right? So a much more serious energy. Your actions have consequences. So, but to me, this is also, I don't know, I feel like it's great. It's good energy. It's lighter. We get to experience that. It's the holiday season, and then Venus moves into Capricorn, and then again we go back to that grounding energy.
Yeah, it's funny. I've got two cards for that, and I'm going to show you one at a time, but together it's doing something kind of funny. So we have the Eight of Cups, and that's typically like, you know, you've put a lot of effort into something and now you have to leave it behind because it's not serving you anymore. That's very superficial if we want to just read a tarot card, not reading the energy of the thing. And then we have this Three of Wands, making plans for the future, envisioning something. You know, it's not impulsive or anything, but it's like very optimistic, like fresh, you know, clean slate kind of vibe. The two of these cards together, the energy is like, I'm just going to leave that thing behind because I'm looking over here now. And there's a double looking over here now. Both of them have their backs to us. So leaving things behind, that can be a little impulsive when you have two of them together. Oh, I'm just going to do this and not look back. I'm just going to try whatever it is and not look back. It's going to be fun. I get to, it's a way lighter energy putting these two things together. So when you talk about self-indulgence and then dealing with the consequences, you don't make any life altering decisions over that weekend, I would say.
Right.
You know, yeah, maybe you don't have to be as heavy with the, okay, I'm finally ready to leave something behind. Woe is me. It's so difficult. Okay, it's not going to be that bad, but maybe just a dose of practicality. But the positive part of this is that in both cases, we're looking forward to something that's way more, I guess, aligned with our 2023. That's what we are moving away from stuff. And so it's okay to like let loose a little bit and not feel so bad about leaving stuff behind. It's just, don't be too impulsive about it.
Agreed. It's definitely energy of celebration. Definitely energy of celebration. But I found it really interesting that right after, on the same day, Venus enters Capricorn. It's like, okay, enough of that. Really funny. Okay. So December 12th, we have the Sun in Sagittarius create a sextile to Saturn in Aquarius. This is great energy. Again, it's so much lighter this month, so much lighter. Sun, both Sagittarius and Aquarius are signs of freedom and liberation. That is not the energy that likes to feel caged, that likes to be smothered. It is not the energy. So the Sun in Sagittarius, okay, so that's Sagittarius Aquarius energy. And then when you have the Sun making a connection to Saturn, in any aspect, even the hard aspects, there's still a component of commitment. This is really interesting because to me, this represents commitment that comes with freedom. Now, this can be in relationships or this can be with self, right? So with self, I commit myself to planning, to planning a little better, to being more organized, because that's going to give me the freedom of more time, of, you know, other projects or other things that actually allow me to feel joyful. Sagittarius energy, creative, Aquarius energy. When it comes to relationships, very interesting because we've seen this begin to really unfold, and it will continue definitely throughout all of next year. We need commitment that feels free. We need commitment where we don't feel caged. Everyone wants to create their Saturn in Aquarius foundation. And we need the freedom to be able to do that in the most genuine way to us.
I really like the progression of the energy this month, and the cards are supporting that same energy. And it's, this building a foundation is not building a foundation on the ground. We're like 3 stories up, and
Mhm,
we're at the lookout point where you actually get to build and look at the view.
mhm,
And we have the world, and this wreath it's like looking through a portal again. So the progression has been, okay, so we have this foundation of the emperor, and then that allows us some stability and some support, and then there's this optimism, and there's this creating something, and abundance, and actually knowing you can have the abundance. And because you've suffered so much, you now can appreciate it without being frivolous or dismissive or whatever. And here we end up with the world, which is like the ultimate goal. But it's not that we arrive here, it's like we're looking through at it. It's
mhm.
really within our grasp. And it's, there's this kind of this playful energy when you actually learn to manifest stuff. It becomes fun, and it's not a struggle anymore.
Mhm.
So it's still, this is continuing to support that. Oh, I actually do know how to manifest things, because it is the world. It's not a little card. It's not like the 10 of Cups or the 10 of Pentacles, where it's very practical and whatever. This is like some big stuff.
Mm.
This doesn't just fall into your lap. This, you have to show up, you have to work, you have to have integrity, you have to have all those very mature, committed things in order to get the world, to be able to get up to that level.
Whoa, yeah.
But it's still fun, and it's playful, and it's lighthearted, but it's like, it's serious now.
Mhm, mhm.
I
I
mean,
like that.
serious in a important way, not serious in a,
Right, right. Yeah, again, that recognition of how much we are able to create and manifest. And I think that what's really landing this month is, again, the click of, oh, I can. And like you said, it does get to be fun.
Mhm.
Um, December 14th, we have the sun in Sagittarius square Neptune in Pisces. So on the one hand, I think that this is a really great creative energy. So in terms of creating through visualization, creating through vision boards, and meditation, that's really beautiful energy for that. That continues to support that transit from December 12th, which is, the connection to Saturn, the showing up, still committing. But Neptune in Pisces adds that creative element, inspired element to it. Now, on the other hand, Sun in Sagittarius square Neptune in Pisces to me feels like a little bit of a letdown or a disillusion of some sort. Kind of uh, be mindful of over promising and under delivering. Be mindful of others over promising and under delivering. I feel that this is a bit of a reality check,
Mm.
even with Neptune and Pisces. Sagittarius energy is very optimistic and can tend to exaggerate sometimes. So while being optimistic is great energy, is beautiful energy, it still needs to be grounded. And I think that this square might bring about some kind of truth. If not on that day, I think that the days following.
Yeah, and that makes sense with what I've got coming up after this one. But I've got the 4 of Swords here, which is, we've spoken about this before. We've got the 3 of Swords, which is the wound, whatever it is, the heartache, the struggle, the pain, the thing that we carry. And then we have the single sword here, which is the mental clarity. So it's a little bit of a time out. So when you think about Neptune and Pisces, there is that dreamy quality, like,
Mhm.
I need to take a break. I need to kind of like step away from the thing because I can't quite see what it is. And then we're trying to gain that Ace of Swords, that mental clarity, that focus. And so if something comes to us that feels like, I can't really discern if this is true or false, or if it's for me, or if it's not, or it's like, I had wanted this other thing, but now this thing showed up. It's like, take a break, take some R&R, whatever you were mentioning, meditating and different things. Take that little introspective moment. It doesn't have to be a whole day of it, but something to sort of step back and like sit. And the intention is to gain mental clarity. So if you focus on not selecting something, but having the mental clarity in order to do whatever that is, that opens it up to that thing showing up.
Yeah.
In a more, clear and concise way, at least.
I like what you said about just taking a moment, taking a step back, because the next day we have the moon in Virgo square Mars retrograde in Gemini. So here we have two energies, Virgo and Gemini, both ruled by Mercury, but with the moon and Mars involved. So with that Sun square Neptune the previous day, I think we're trying to search for a clarity that we might rush into something. The moon in Virgo tends to want to know now and need to know the details now. And because that's how a moon in Virgo can feel nurtured and okay. It's about knowing, having the to-do list in order to follow the to-do list, right? And that square with Mars retrograde in Gemini, it's just too much right now. It's like, it's either too much information or too much to take in some way. But something's just not quite clear yet. And so the moon in Virgo, in needing to have an answer right now with Mars retrograde, to me, that feels like a misstep and unnecessarily.
That is very interesting. So we have the Page of Pentacles. Pages are always messengers of things. They're all about communication all the time. Pentacles are about material things, paperwork, documents, information. And so when we have it in this, with this vibe that's been coming through of taking a break, and you are able to rush, you're able to go quicker, but maybe you shouldn't go as quick as you possibly could. All of that stuff, we're sort of testing the new, the new speed of things and the new energy. Everything is like the viscosity of the surface that we're on is way smoother. So it kind of reminds me, so the pages are juvenile. They're not as mature as the other court cards. So knights or kings or queens. Imagine you have to write a thesis now, and it seems super heavy and super daunting. But if you could write it for, and it's not dumbing it down, but if you could write it for, a grade 9 kid to understand, or a grade 6 kid to understand, then it takes that, it's difficult to do, but it also takes it down to that place of like, oh, when I do this, I actually know what I'm doing. When we don't, and we're in that place of like, this is a PhD, it can become so overwhelming, and there's so many words and big words and information and all that. And it's just like, no, bring it back down to this more juvenile place. And there's nothing wrong with this information. There's nothing wrong with how that page communicates. It's just, it's minor compared to the major, the messenger. He's not a king. So it's like, bring it down to that place.
Yeah. I try to steer clear of any aspects to the moon unless they're, major lunar events like a full moon and a new moon. But I felt that this one was important to throw in there because it's like you said, it's in the middle of the back and forth. It's in the middle of, oh, I want to move really fast, but this is brand new. So that's why I threw that in there. That's mid-month. So pay attention to that. I think that December 17th, that's better. That's a little better energy to have certain conversations, make a call, take one step towards that new plan. This is Mercury and Capricorn creating a really nice trine to Uranus and Taurus. So Uranus and Taurus is giving us the permission to do things differently, think outside the box. But it's still Taurus energy. So it's still acting, it's still asking, you can do the big thing, you can do the outside the box thing, but even that requires, you know, a step-by-step process. And Mercury and Capricorn is just, of course, in love with that. There's a grounding energy to this really big thing that we want to accomplish, that we want to move towards. It's earth energy. Earth energy likes to move slowly. Earth energy likes to master in order to materialize in the long run. So let that energy pass by. That like the 12th through the 15th is, I don't know, if it gives me like a little bit of anxious energy. I don't know. But I think that once the 17th comes along and Mercury gets in contact with Uranus and Taurus, things will make sense. You'll receive the phone call, you'll receive the email, that answer. Yeah.
So we have a really nice card here, which is the 10 of Cups. And you know, cups are about emotions. It's not like the 10 of Pentacles where you've got all this material mastery. This is like on an emotional level. It's got that happily ever after kind of, okay, a little bit of a Disney ending to it. But we have succession because we had the 9 of Cups just a few cards back. So it gives you that feeling of like it is within your grasp, and it's about how you feel. So whatever it is, we talk about creating these big things, but they're not necessarily like you're trying to build a physical empire or you're trying to whatever. It's the personal work that we've gone through, and it's there, it's right there now. So if you want to communicate to somebody about that, or you've got it clear in your mind so you're able to move forward, that's what this embodies. It's like maximum fulfillment in your heart, in your soul, in your self-awareness here. It's that 10.
Yeah, love that. On December 20th, we have Jupiter moving back into Aries. So Jupiter, we've experienced Jupiter in Aries earlier this year, and that was from May through the summer into September. So we experienced the first 8 to 9 degrees of Jupiter in Aries. Now Jupiter is moving back into Aries and is going to remain there till May 16th. It's going to go through the entire 30 degrees of Aries till May 16th, 2023. This is, first off, I think that this is definitely the emphasis on the self, expansion of self, growth of the self. This is definitely going to affect relationships. Aries is also one of those signs, that energy of freedom and liberation in relationship. It's fire energy. It wants to move quickly. It wants to move quickly and whenever it wants, however it wants. Sovereignty, independence. I mean, Jupiter in Aries is exciting. I liked Jupiter in Aries. It was good to me. So I'm really looking forward to how it unfolds as the months come on, but I like this energy. It's fun.
It's interesting here again, because I'll show you the card in a minute. In many decks, this card is depicted with a single person in it, leaving or escaping. But in this deck, so we have the 6 of Swords, we actually have, it looks like a family leaving. So there's one guy here, and then it looks like a female character, and then a little child sitting there. And there is this feeling of movement. There's a feeling of escape. It's not an impulsive feeling. 6s are always very well balanced. It's balanced energy. And it's being able to leave something and move somewhere else quite swiftly. You're on the water, you have the current behind you. It might be a little bit choppy, but it's like this feeling of escaping confinement, escaping restrictions, escaping all of those things. So those, they might be in a relationship, they might be in your, how you spend your time in the world every day, like being trapped or stuck or whatever. So there's that feeling of, oh, I got out on time. Like, oh, I'm glad I listened to that thing. Or aren't I lucky that thing just opened up over there? Let's go. So it's, even though the decisions might be quick, it's still not impulsive. And there's a feeling of having escaped. If you didn't move, if you didn't take that step or hop in the boat and sail away, that you would be anchored to this less than desirable energy.
That's really great, because on December 21st, the next day, we have the sun moving into Capricorn, which is the winter solstice. And that's the beginning of a new season. It's also the day that, on the day, remember, Jupiter entered Aries, right? So you were saying it's finally, coming out of that space, like the sense of liberation. And then the next day with the winter solstice, the first thing that the sun in Capricorn does is create a square, a 90-degree angle to Jupiter in Aries. This is a big deal because we have two cardinal signs at 0 degrees activating one another at the beginning of a season. There's a lot about December that feels like before and after. And it's, again, those downloads really activating very quickly, just up here, much more than at an emotional level, I feel. So the sun square Jupiter is expansion of the self, expansion of the ego, but more of the ego's purpose, the ego carrying out the soul's purpose. I feel that feels right. And so we want to be mindful, because Jupiter in Aries can be arrogant, can be hot-headed. Sun in Capricorn square Jupiter in Aries can be authoritarian, not fun, very arrogant energy. But on the other hand, this is really powerful energy. This is great new beginning. 2 cardinal signs at 0 degrees. Cardinal signs are the signs in the zodiac that begin new seasons. It's a new beginning.
So there's a lot of archetypes that are showing up in these cards and the energy for December. And so when we go back to the day before, so we have this mother and child, and we have this third energy taking them away. So when you think about that, it's the nurturer, and who is doing the nurturing and who is receiving the nurturing. And that can be within ourselves, that ability to actually receive nurturing and also to care for ourselves or allow others to care for us, and to take care in how we've done all this work. Why would you anchor yourself to the shore now? So it's that sort of encapsulating your emotions or your feelings, and let's keep going. Let's go with the flow. And so on this day, it's funny again how they show up, but we've got excuse me, the high priestess, which is all about intuition. It's a feminine card. It's like the feminine version of the magician.
Okay.
So it's this phases of the moon, and feminine cycles for this. We're at the peak of hibernation here. It's the shortest day of the year. And then we have this juvenile energy of the Page of Cups. It's a child. It represents a child. So again, it's like this mother energy and the child energy and the playfulness and the openness without the immaturity or A little bit of coffee went in the corner there.
Uh,
It's like you said arrogant, but you know, when somebody is underdeveloped
mhm,
and they want to run the show,
mhm.
it's that kind of feeling on the negative side. On the positive side, it's being open and playful and anxious to have a new experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I can definitely see that because we have to remember that Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So it does tend to have this very young essence to it. Very it's not a mature energy. It's the first sign of the zodiac. It hasn't developed. And so what is known as the parental archetype in the zodiac is actually Capricorn. So, and Capricorn is a feminine energy. So very interesting, perfect cards for that because um yeah, that's a really beautiful combination for that energy. Um the following day on December 22nd, Venus in Capricorn creates a trine to Uranus in Taurus. So remember, Mercury in Capricorn created a trine on December 17th, and 5 days later, Venus does the same thing. So, whatever it is that you're conversing about, making decisions about, beginning to see some forward movement on December 17th, by December 22nd, there's a follow-up call. There's the follow-up meeting. Venus, there is actual connection with someone else to move forward with this thing, with this plan. Uh, Venus and Capricorn doesn't want to waste time.
Mhm.
Venus and Capricorn, trine Uranus and Taurus, Venus rules Taurus. This is about being very mindful of your resources, time, money, effort, energy, creativity, because that has been a big theme all year long.
Mhm.
And I love that aspect as well. Again, it's a great grounding aspect. We're getting real, and this feels to me like asking for what we want.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say things like, you know, pay attention to, this practical aspect of all of these things. We've just come through this like very dreamy, imagine all these things. And now we're asked to be very practical. And that can feel boring to people.
Mhm.
And they're waiting for that spectacular thing. And that spectacular thing it's not going to be spectacular when you have to, plop stuff into a spreadsheet and pay your bills and make
Right.
those calls and all that kind of stuff. And so the card that we have is the Four of Cups, where the thing that you've been asking for is being presented, but you're so busy looking at oh, this is so boring, these are the same old cups, blah, blah, blah. But it's that energy of, these are all the things that make me successful. So
Mhm.
I actually have to do them all, knock them off the list. And then, oh, there's the opportunity that's creating that energy. So I think on this day and any time we're faced with this, when you have to do the practical aspects of whatever it is that you do, whether it's your inner work or your business or your job or your relationship or whatever, keep in mind that doing all those things keeps the energy flowing. It
Mhm.
attracts more of this. It attracts like, oh, it's still changing, it's still growing, I'm still manifesting. And so it's just this little warning of like, okay, you've asked for stuff. It's not all going to be Cirque du Soleil every day. Pay attention when it shows up. It might look mundane. It might look like
Right.
all the others. Just,
Mhm.
oh, look up and take notice.
Mhm. And the next day, we have the new moon in Capricorn. So it's everything you just said, now is when we, roll up our sleeves and get to work. New moon in Capricorn always represents the setting the intention of what do I want to work towards. Usually, I think last year the new moon in Capricorn happened on the new year. So the new moon in Capricorn tends to be the first new moon of a new year, which sets the tone for what we want to build, what we want to create, what we want to work towards. This is no different. It's just happening in December. But I like this. I like this new moon in Capricorn. I think it's asking us to level up, and just knowing that it's not that things aren't going to magically happen, but that we are supported, and that the manifesting gets to be easeful in that, like you said, when you create something consistently, inevitably it will manifest. And it's that, to me, that's what I like to call meeting the universe halfway. We do our part, the universe does its part. So it's a good new moon.
We have the card of victory, and this victory feels a lot like gratitude. So we're, marching in very confidently with our victory wreath, and, all the wands are raised, and there's a lot of appreciation and applause maybe, but think of it from that space of where I want to be, what I'm asking for. If I give myself this right now in the present and imagine what that's like. I'm really grateful for all the hard work. I'm grateful for the bills. I'm grateful for the ability for all of this stuff to always show up exactly when I need it. Now, if your bills are $3,000 a month, isn't it amazing that I have double that? It's that feeling of victory, sort of like in the future, embody the things that you want in the future, in the present, which it's victory and gratitude, like two sides of the same coin.
Right. That's also really great energy for December 24th. Mercury in Capricorn sextile Neptune in Pisces. So that ability to be grateful for something before it has come to fruition, it is one of the clearest ways of manifesting. Neptune in Pisces, believe it before you see it. Mercury in Capricorn, do what needs to do in order to align with it. So it's a beautiful combo of earth, water, Capricorn, Pisces energy. And when you put earth and water together, something grows. So that's that's December 24th.
And we have the Six of Cups. So we've had lots of sixes here throughout. We've had 3 of them. And it's a nostalgic feeling. It's about, again, there's a lot of this light, playful, childlike energy throughout this month, which we need because we've adulting this whole year. And it's, if we can say adulting, we've almost been elderling as well, if I can make up a word, because it's been like so much wisdom that we were trying to attain. And we get to revisit things, it's a full year later, we're revisiting all these old emotions and get to see them again and say, okay, like we can be playful, we can hang out with people again, we can see how we interact now with all this new information. How do I behave? How do I do things? How do I, if it's not a relationship, what about in my workplace? I have new ways of doing things. I've created new patterns and habits. So it's this cyclical thing where it's okay, it's the same old thing, but I'm a different person. It's revisiting something with new awareness, and that new awareness is not heavy like we thought it was going to be.
Right. Yes. The revisiting part is really appropriate, because on December 28th, we have Venus in Capricorn create a sextile to Neptune in Pisces, what Mercury just did the day before. But we have to remember that last December into January 2022, we had Venus retrograde, a significant Venus retrograde in Capricorn. So the fact that Venus is coming back through Capricorn exactly a year later, to me, the sextile to Neptune in Pisces is kind of the remembering of, look at how far I've come. And because it's in Venus, I think it's especially in relationships and the relationship to ourselves. The Neptune in Pisces is also connection to spirit, connection to source. And Venus in Capricorn is a very grounded energy. And its highest expression is, I like to think of it as very, very gentle strength. There's a, I don't think it's energy that is, I don't know, undermined. I don't think it's that. I think there's a strength, there's an assertion, there's just a knowing. And the sextile to Neptune in Pisces is, yeah, my soul's been through it. That's where this came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so used to that with it off of us now. It's just like, oh yeah, look at that. So different. So we have the Two of Wands here, which again is very balanced. It's, I don't know if you can see, but one wand is in the past and the other wand is in the future. And there is our world again that we just had. So he's holding the world, looking towards the future, still has peace in the past. It's planning. It's this moment of like, I'm really now ready to plan for the new year.
Yeah.
And it is grounded and it's bright and it's slow enough. You're not catapulting forward into that new year. It's just like you get to stand there right at the threshold nicely.
Yes. And that is the perfect segue to the last major aspect of the year, which is on December 29th, when Mercury in Capricorn begins its retrograde phase and wakes up on January 18th. So exactly what you just said, you're not being catapulted into the new year. You're just standing there, you're taking it in, you're really grounding in it. So we're beginning 2023 with two retrograde planets, Mercury and Mars. Both will go direct just a few days apart from one another in January, but yeah, we're taking things slowly. It's an interesting start to the year.
It is. And it's funny. I have two cards here. So we have, I think everybody can kind of relate to that vibe when they think of Mercury retrograde. I'm not even going to say anything about it, but we actually have the Ace of Swords. So again, when we think back a little ways, we had the Four of Swords. We take that little time to rest with the Three of Swords, the pain and the agony, to gain mental clarity. The Ace of Swords is about that mental clarity. In this Mercury retrograde, it's that just keep trying to find mental clarity. These are two opposite cards. This is overthinking everything to death in the middle of the night. And this is, oh, let me just focus. Let me just. And so it's always sort of asking, I guess the theme that brings us from December into just after those retrograde periods is seeking mental clarity with our feet grounded in Capricorn energy, keep our heads focused on mental clarity. If you feel unclear, take a break.
Yep. Yeah, much lighter month.
Totally. Yeah, I think it should be good, for all the celebrating and cavorting and frolicking and everything else everybody does. It should be good, I think.
Agreed. I think yeah, so much lighter. I will say for those that are traveling, if you have not booked your stuff yet, do it this week, do it this weekend. if you want to push it out to when Mercury's in its shadow, pre-retrograde shadow into the teens, then fine. But be mindful that if you're traveling New Year's, you know, into January, two retrograde planets, Mars and Mars in Gemini, the sign that is ruled by Mercury, which will be retrograde. So you'll want to, I don't know, I've been advising have hard copies of your confirmations,
Yes.
you know, so, but I'm really already loving December.
Yeah.
I feel it feels creative. It feels optimistic. I'm looking forward to what the rest of it brings. I'm just looking forward to it.
Yeah, it feels like a relief without the frivolous part of it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like a relief, like where you actually can enjoy yourself without it being extravagant or excessive or I don't know, nerve-wracking and all those typical things. It doesn't have either end, you know, that heavy anchoring or the completely spastic part. It just feels very much in the middle, pleasant, happy, light. Yeah, I like it. I don't know where 2022 went, but I think we ended on a pretty good note.
I think so too. I think we deserve this. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Susheela. Thank you for all of you for joining us this entire year. I look forward to doing more of these, and Happy New Year to you all.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure, and it's always entertaining for me, even being involved in these, seeing how the energies line up. And yeah, I look forward to many, many more.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.